Hello and welcome to another episode of the conversion of Granny Grumman. In this episode, we'll be changing the tires. When I changed the brakes on Granny Grumman, it took an excessive amount of force to put the front lug nuts on. I'm applying some more anti-seize here, so when I take them off, the threads don't get damaged. The first job I ever had when I was 18 was changing tires at America's Tire Company, so I decided to buy this Harbor Freight tire changer and go ahead and do the job all on my own to save a little money. The first step is to break the bead on both sides of the tire. This tire changer needs to be firmly mounted, and luckily my dad's property has an old cement patch with some lugs sticking out of it, so I bolted it down. Once the tire's been placed on the machine, the next step is to cinch it down and make sure that it is securely held onto the changer. Then, using these tire irons that I also got from Harbor Freight, I'll slowly work around the top bead and bring it over the top edge of the wheel. The next step is to bring the bottom bead over the top edge of the wheel and then slowly move this tool around the pivot point in the center to bring the tire up over the top edge of the wheel. It's always a good idea to apply some type of lubricant to make the job easier. WD-40 or soapy water will work great. Now that I have the tire off the wheel, I'll go ahead and use this steel wire wheel on a drill to clean up the lip of the wheel so that the new bead of the new tire has something to seal to. After applying a generous amount of lubricant, I'll go ahead and push the bottom bead over the top lip of the wheel and then begin putting it on using tire irons. The big red bar provided with the tire changer kept popping out of place, so I decided to use these tire irons instead. Even though I have to balance my leg on here, it was a lot less fiddly than using the provided tool. Removing the Schrader valve and using an air compressor easily seated 3 out of the 4 tires, but one of them gave me a lot of trouble because the wheel had a lot of corrosion. I started with a ratchet strap to try and force both the beads against the lips of the wheel, but that didn't do anything. I also tried applying generous amounts of soapy water and bouncing the tire, and that still did nothing. Off camera, I mounted the wheel onto Granny Grumman and lowered the jack so that the weight of Granny Grumman could push the tire out, and that still didn't do it. So as a last-ditch effort, I took highly flammable brake cleaner and sprayed it inside the tire, then, using a lighter and the brake cleaner, ignited it so that it would create a tiny explosion and expand the tire. Since the front lug nuts had such a hard time coming off, I decided to put some fresh new ones on. These tires are rated for 110 psi, and I wanted to bring them all the way up so that the bead would seat, so I didn't air them up until they were fully mounted onto the van. Once all the beads were seated, I aired the tires down to 80 psi and then torqued them all to spec using a crisscross and circle pattern. And the last step was a test drive. With the new tires on, Granny Grumman rides so much smoother. Some of the tires dated all the way back to 2008 and they were extremely worn out. Now that the tires are on, almost all the major mechanical repairs are done on Granny Grumman. Thanks again for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the conversion of Granny Grumman.